So I'm going to give a little introduction to Candida, and then we will get started. Dame un número. Give me a number, Candida's mother would tell her. She intuitively knew that her mother meant a number from 1 to 26 in accordance with the alphabet. Selecting a number meant selecting a letter, and the letter would be her mother's compass to find out who was trying to contact her from beyond this realm. I love this story. It so quickly highlights how Candida is in this world and others, and the plays she sees in living. I met Candida Alvarez in 2023 at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, a residency program in Maine where we both were faculty that year. I got to see her process as an educator and an artist, and at the root of both is a profound level of observation and responsiveness. It's always fun to talk to Candida, but when you ask her questions about painting and her practice, there's a different level of focus that emerges, one where I notice myself hanging on to her every word. There were many times when it felt like she was tapped into something past this world, and her words were like a tunnel to that elsewhere. In those moments, it's best to shut up and listen. So I went back and listened to the talk that she gave at Skowhegan. When she finished, she was going like a mile a minute, and then she finally finishes and she quietly stops and says, "Thank you." And in what became typical fashion of the end of a Skowhegan talk, the room erupted with both applause and foot stomps, more stadium than art talk. But then a hush came over the room as she opened it up to questions. And even in the recording, you could hear it. Something I can't really explain. You could hear the spotlight on her, the concentration on what she was about to say. What I want to say is that Candida has a bit of magic about her. And after a long time, New York gets to feel it. So with that, I'm just going to list off some accolades of yours. Alvarez has participated in residencies at the Skowhegan School of Painting, Studio Museum in Harlem, the Luma Foundation, among others. Recent awards include the Trellis Art Fund Award, the Latinx Artist Fellowship Award, and the American Academy of Arts and Letters Award. Her work is included in the collections of the Art Institute of Chicago, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Denver Art Museum, the Studio Museum of Harlem, and the Perez Art Museum in Miami, among many others. Everybody give it up for Candida Alvarez.
Thank you. That was so beautiful.
How are you?
I'm not sure.
Let's start with a number. I feel like the number 2 is the one that always comes up for you.
Well, I was born the second day of the second month, and I'm the second child, right? So I guess you could say 2 does circle around me.
We're looking at your retrospective here at the Museo del Barrio, and it's called Circle Point Loop. And these are some install shots. These are, I want to maybe just start here. These are works that are called View from John Street.
The drawings, the first, those charcoal drawings, were from John Street, Brooklyn, where I had a studio. And that building's still there, and there are still artist studios there on the right side. I was up on the second floor. And it was a great space. It was one of my first spaces in New York. And it was very dangerous. I remember I've trained to York Street. So bad that one of my father's friends gave me a really old car to drive, you know. And but it was a beautiful space, you know. I could see the plant, but I could see the water beyond. And I had a residency in Germany. It was through a program in Philadelphia, Creative Artist Network, I believe. And I learned about it through a fellow artist in residence, Charles Burwell, who was from Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an opportunity for an artist to go away for a month, and they chose the city, right?
Oh, wow.
So I went to Cologne.
Wow.
Right, that's what I said. Wow. And I spent a lot of time at the Dome Cathedral. I was fascinated by it structurally,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what it meant for the city, but also there was this above and below. So, so below is that what do they call that? It's not the basement, but there's a special name for the crypt. It was the crypt of
Oh,
the
okay.
church,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful space with little light bulbs and
Oh, wow.
just sort of a very special place to chill out in after a big day of traveling around. And the church was filled with a lot of art, a lot of stained glass. I met so many wonderful artists there, and they actually put together a catalog for me, and they curated a show, and those drawings were a part of it that I actually did in John Street. So I came back with a lot of beer coasters, right? The circular forms, which I was fascinated by.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to do charcoal drawings, which I had never really done. But I think it was the dust. Right, there they go. So there's more of them. There were several of them. And I just used charcoal and got to work. And you can see the circular pattern came from one of those beer coasters. Tape was used to get some of those rectangular shapes. I used a razor blade to get these kind of whitish, almost dashed lines through the paper. Um, I got totally engaged with them, and after I did them, I didn't do anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a charcoal drawing from you since. So it was really part of going to that show and like walking through the museum. You know, I've known you for a couple of years now, and I've seen the work, and I understand like color plays such a huge role in how you think about, I mean, I feel like how you think about life, that it was it was surprising to see charcoal drawings and just the breadth of the work. There's so many different projects, there's so many different ways of working, and like, did this feel foundational? Because you talk about drawing a lot as like really the root of what you do.
Well, I think, there's something beautiful about blackness. And black is a color.
Mm-hmm.
It is all color, right? I mean, it's like people don't often think of black and white as color, which I find kind of interesting. But it's really a beautiful way to see deeply, right? I mean, I love charting space using black, and gray tones. Yeah, there's something about commanding space with a very with little tool, right? I mean, the stick of charcoal is kind of beautiful. That one thing, that can create all this magic, I find really, it was very beautiful. I mean, I just didn't like the dustiness so much, charcoal is hard to really pin down, and but I did a lot of sort of I love the highlighting, right? The light and dark. And I also like taking pictures, I had a camera for a long. My first tool was a camera.
Yeah, they almost feel like abstract photographs.
Yeah, I love black and white photography. I fell in love with it, I used to love Roy DeCarrara's work, where he went from pitch black to white, Harry Callahan. I mean,
that's when you can see that black and white are colors.
Steichen, I loved.
Yeah.
I mean, I just loved that kind of classical. I mean, there was something poignant and very stark, and at the same time, the gray tones allowed for a lot of. It allowed for a time interval to be introduced into the compositions, right? It's not like when you just have black and white, your eyes move really fast. But when there's gray, your eye moves, like it's like on a tripod, like it could be moved. It's like when you're making films. Like I love, classical, like vintage black and white films.
Did you grow up watching a lot of movies?
Chiller theater. I think television was mostly black and white for a long time. Yeah, I did. Not a lot, but enough to keep me at the edge of my seat, right? but yeah, I think to have a camera, to be suspended in time, to click, to have Polaroids. I mean, that was magical to me. I really thought I was going to do more work with a camera, but I still do work with a camera, right? Because a lot of my documentation, I take a lot of pictures. I just don't show them.
Why don't you show them?
Because I don't need to. I just use them.
So they get used for compositions or how you think about the work?
I love capturing details of my daily life.
And did that start as early as like when, so this is in the 80s, and then by the 90s, that's when you apply to Yale and get in and go there. And the work, I think there are consistencies, but also there's some really major things.
Yeah, there was more change. There was less photography.
Yeah.
And more about the body interacting, or, all these. I came up with a way to identify a sort of a dimension. I wanted this idea of intentionality. I was studying with Mel Bachner, of course. That was his big question to us all the time. What is your intention? And that was a word that I held on to, and I was trying to define it for myself. I wanted to have a formal way to define that. And that was my curiosity, right? And so I wanted to move. When I got into Yale, I was doing those multiple panels. They were really colorful. This all happened at Yale because I was trying to unpack something that was significant. I was really trying to mine what do you call it? Your life experiences, right? Like, I mean, these kind of ways of being in the world, like the ways I listened, let's say in my family, the way I heard my mother ask me, the way I paid attention, the way my father taught us a game of boxes, right? There was something, I love the systematic nature of that. There was something very systematic about it, right? And I just like threading through the unexpected, right? Like, I wanted to sort of use this language, invent a language that came out of something really familiar, but yet was very conceptual. Like it like all of a sudden got elevated to something else, right? And so I just like the retranslation of something unexpected. Like the mystery of making, for me, is very exciting. But the context is also really important, like how it begins, right? And what are the questions? And why is that so important? Well, it was a way to identify, right? And to, like, who am I as the artist, And why is it that what I was making was boring to me? It was becoming boring, right? Because familiarity gets boring to me,
Could you see yourself in these? Like, this is, so we're looking at like almost like a wavy grid of screws that have kind of looped wire around them.
They're not screws, they're nails.
Nails, sorry.
But I was drawing with nails and, pencils and rubber bands, and because I was reconstructing the language. Like, I was using, it was kind of using the alphabet. It was a way to get back to a word or to a beginning point, like the word intention or the word convention. I was kind of mimicking Mel in a way, but in my own little weirdness, I was able to respond. So I was responding.
And did he see it as a response?
I think he was kind of intrigued. I think he was intrigued. I didn't reveal all my mysteries, I just kind of went for it.
I don't think you ever do.
No, you can't. You kind of just do what you need to do. You don't have to over explain anything, because then it gets kind of like...
Yeah, it dies a little.
Yeah. I like to keep some mystery.
This is like, I feel like there's a lot of systems early on.
Yes.
I mean, there's always systems, there's always patterns, but finding ways to make a composition based on kind of chance operations too. Like this one, tossing pennies, literally happens from tossing pennies.
Exactly. But that also came, the beginning point goes really early back to my father.
Okay.
Who tossed pennies in the air for good luck.
Oh.
So as this inquisitive child, I'm more mesmerized by the fact that the penny is tracking a pathway, right? There's something about the penny being flung that was more interesting to me than the penny landing. But the landing was the luck, right? Somehow it's like what held the space. It kind of held the space in a way that's what my father's desire was, right? He wanted to get it. It was a way to sort of, I don't know, it was weird. It was weird. What can I say? But I noticed it and I wanted to use it, right? And so that's how, this was one of the first pieces I did when I got to Yale. And it was an empty studio. And I just looked around the room and collected things. Those were all free for taking because they were just pieces laying around. So I just used them. And I love the way that I felt free enough to organize them together, right? Because that was new for me. And then I had, my son was about, when was I there? 1995. He was born in 1991. So that's my little son's hand, Ramon. He was in the picture too. So I made a Xerox, that little thing.
Right here.
Yeah, that's my son's hand. He's like, so my son was there with me too.
Oh, wow.
And so I started tossing. So what happened was I had those pieces of wood paneling, and then I just started tossing the pennies into them. And then wherever they landed, I just traced them, or I glued them down. And then I had little pathways because I really was very intrigued about that, like how to mark territory and how to create a space that was coming out of something intentional in a way, and also about memory. And so it was like solving a puzzle that I felt I had to create for myself as the artist.
You know, I feel like the word abstraction gets used a lot, and a lot of times people, you know, they mean different things when they say it. And I love how much you bristle at the word abstraction because it bothers me too. I think people use it too freely, and it's like, I'm using your words here where it's like we're abstracting all the time.
Yeah.
And when you think about your practice, what is a better word to describe what it is that you do?
I paint, I draw.
Yeah, okay. I'll take that.
I think, what do I think? Like we were talking about Vernon Reid. I mean, I love Vernon Reid. And when he came out with that album, Living Color, I was just blown away. I was blown away because he collaborated with Greg Tate. So there were words, they were artists who worked with words. So the lyrics are so incredibly powerful. So for me, I took that to represent what I do, you know, living color. I could never forget that. So for me, when I talk about painting, I love painting because I can use color, and color is living to me. And that means that it can change. It changes depending on where you situate that painting, right? What kind of light is on that painting. So I love that. I love that it's alive. And I think that's what's really what I like to do. I like to wrestle with color, right? There's something about that engagement that never ends. It's a conversation that's continuous. And I don't know, I love it.
I feel like that shift into color, like I'm actually curious because to me, I've known your work when color was it, you know, like it was always there. It was like a foregone conclusion. But in these works, like for instance, in Extension,
There's color.
There's definitely color, but how do you conceptualize a shift from a piece like Extension to what we're gonna see in a bit?
Well, because these are all stepping stones, right? They're all steps towards something, and that's the mystery of making or being the artist, right? I mean, I only make these pieces because I want to try to understand something. I'm not really sure what that is yet, but it's the mystery of wanting to discover something that keeps me going.
This feels like a portal to me. There's something really, there's a lot of mysterious works, but this one in particular really does stand out.
That's convention.
Extension.
Extension.
Yeah.
Well, I was responding to, I don't know. We had to read Harold Bloom, The Anxiety of Influence.
Was he teaching there at the time?
No, this was Mel's class. Okay. Right? I think for me, I was talking to myself, so I wanted to extend myself like a clock. I wanted to see myself like Vitruvius man, like
Uh-huh.
Michael, like
Yeah, the
that's
Vitruvian.
kind of what I was thinking about. Like I was like, I could be a star. I could be a man extending like a clock.
Candida is talking about Da Vinci's
Yeah,
Vitruvian Man, where
very famous. And
yeah.
it's like a star. And I don't know, I'm sort of intrigued by history, also. And history that maybe people don't think I should be a part of, or maybe, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just by chance you bump into things, or you're reminded of things, right? It's like you ask me a question and all of a sudden you take me on a tangent or something,
Mhm.
and I might have not been thinking about that as a portal, but all of a sudden I can connect something that I was thinking about. It's just, I think it's having the courage to just do whatever the hell you want to do. And I think we just get so locked into expectation, other people's expectations, right? When we're young, we're students, we hang on to every word and we try to be the best that we could be, right? But sometimes you just forget yourself in that equation, right? Because you're trying to be something that you think that you should be as opposed to being what you really are. And so I think learning and unlearning is a part of it all.
Did you always have that courage?
Probably not. No. But I failed at trying to be perfect. you know, I like to practice my penmanship. Like, I mean, I think
That's not what I.
right calligraphy
That's
was
not what
like
I thought you were
so
gonna say.
important to me, and like I loved that. The practice of it.
Uh-huh.
I tried to be good at math, and I was terrible. But I tried my best with trigonometry and all of that. Um, and then, I didn't know that I was an artist or I wanted to be an artist because that wasn't something that was in my early learning,
Mhm.
really, although I did like to, I think it was the Daily News that had this little picture that you could get colors it was like a little paint by number, like a
Oh yeah.
Warhol thing. And I used to love to do that. And I used to I used to love what do you call it, paint
Paint
by
by numbers.
numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I used to love that. And I used to love working with colorgram. What was that game where you peel the plastic and it was all these shapes? Colograph, like
Oh wow. I don't
colograms.
know.
There was a game. Uh, anyway, I can't remember. And I used to love Etch a Sketch.
Yeah, yeah. Those are great.
I was always drawn to something that I could participate in a different way, right? And
Yeah.
so I never knew that this was my path.
But then, I mean, you go to Yale. I mean, of
It
course,
was years later.
sure. Like you went to Fordham for school.
It was at Fordham where
and that's when you really started to feel it?
yeah, that's where I took art classes.
Okay.
And I wanted to carry that big black portfolio. I was fascinated by that big black, and I had a friend. It was true. I was like, "What is that?" and and then I got lucky. I took a class with Susan Crowell and Jack Whitten,
Oh,
and
wow.
and Paul Brock was teaching history, and he was married to Miriam Shapiro. I mean, so I got lucky. It was the 70s, and all of a sudden, somebody like Jack Whitten, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that he was such a well-known artist, right? But I took his class, and he was very encouraging, and I didn't have a lot of supplies. I I didn't know how to stretch a painting, but I used to go to Pearl Paint and buy my stretch canvases.
R.I.P.
And then
Pearl
I took
Payne.
a figure painting class, and I had models. I worked from a model. I worked at, Susan Crowell was really great at giving direction. And one day, towards the end, I was graduating, and Jack looks at me and says to me, if you make those really big, if you continue to make those pieces really big, you can actually win awards. Well, I was like, is he talking? I was thinking, is he really talking to me? So I was kind of shocked. But what happened was at that moment, he was paying attention and he noticed the seeds that I had, right? Like he acknowledged them and made me aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me something to pause, gave me pause and gave
Yeah.
me something to really think about. And that gave me a lot of courage,
That's beautiful.
right? And so, but he actually said you should apply to Cooper Union.
Oh, shit.
And I asked for I asked for the application. It was about, I don't know how many pages, but I looked at it, kept turning the pages, and I was like, I can't handle this. And but fast forward how many years, and I'm teaching at Cooper Union.
Wow.
Right. And I'm like, I guess I did have to come to Cooper Union, to make my move back to New York. I mean, here I am again,
I mean, you've taught for so long. Like you were at the SAIC in Chicago for
20 years.
20 years.
Mm-hmm.
When you started, it was in the late 90s, right?
Yes.
And
1998.
did you feel ready to be a teacher then?
No.
I mean, I guess Ramon was probably, what, 7, 8?
Yeah, we went to, so I went to Fordham, didn't go right to art school, to graduate school. I went instead to Museo del Barrio that had free classes and workshops. So it was a little easier to handle, right? Because there was no expectation, right? There was just, well, you can take classes. So Bill Toulis was teaching there, who's a phenomenal printmaker, who was teaching, actually he was a professor at Pratt. And he came to work there part-time. And while I was there, I started looking at catalogs. I had one of Vermeer Bearden's. I fell in love with those black and white photo montages, I mean, and so if, big eyeballs, big, parts of the body, right? I mean, it was just weird. And I think I held that for a long time. I mean, I think that there is something about that kind of dismantling of something familiar that's interesting to me, right? And that gathering, right? So then from there, I, worked with I met artists there, and then I did a little sort of curatorial, very small little curatorial engagement with pre-Columbian art. I was studying pre-Columbian art because the Museo, Fred Olson wrote this huge book, and so we had, I think he came to visit, I'm not sure, but I was fascinated by this little statues that they were collecting, the wooden sculptures. And then from there, from a museo, I learned about the Cedar Artist Project, which happened in what was it, the later late 70s, early 80s, and that was another really amazing, very robust community of artists that came together, and it was the first time that the city of New York actually, paid artists to do their work. And I got lucky. I was part of the first group and stayed there, and that's where everything happened. A lot of things happened there.
Yeah.
And so I started to feel more confident in being the artist, right? I was the youngest one probably in that program, I think. And then I was in the writing, they had sections, and they had like photographers, they had painters, and I was kind of in the writers section. And
in the writers section?
Yeah, for some reason. They had groups. I was with the poets, but lucky me in a way, because it was like Bob Holman and Pedro Petri and Sandra Minier. So I learned a lot about other, but we all met once a week to get paychecks. But that's where I met Dowd Bay and Ursula von Schweidensvard, and Vincent Smith, and oh my goodness, it was fantastic. So to feel the energy of being an artist in New York and to be able to do what you do and get paid for it was just like unbelievable, right? So then that's what happened. And then I stayed in New York, got married, had a son. 7 months old,
Wow.
My partner wanted to go to Yale, get his master's degree in photography. So we went as a family. So while he was there, he graduated, and I was like, well, I think it's my turn. So that's how it happened. That's how I landed in Yale. There was a market crash. It was a good time to leave the city, right? Artists weren't making any money, but a lot of us were going back to school so we can get our degree so we can make more money.
Right.
Teaching classes.
I feel like, today there's, on the one side of things, it's like you can maybe be a megastar and make all this money as an artist, and then there's the sense that like nobody's making any money, and this isn't really a great career path for any reason at all. But back, like, I feel like that CETA program gives you this sense early on that, like, oh, this, I can do this, I can make a living off of this. And like, I I don't know. I mean, it seems like a really specific thing that might have just, yeah, it might have been,
We were lucky.
yeah.
It was 3 years for us, and we had a really cheap apartment, which we lost on Cambridge Place, which I miss, Clinton Hill. And yeah, it makes me sad thinking about it. Because I used to have my studio right in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so ground floor apartment, it was great. But anyway, so we lived in Connecticut. I had found a beautiful studio at Rector Square, which is not too far from the school. You know, our son started school, and
How did that all, like, in my head, I've heard this from many female artists that either are thinking about children or have children. They've heard from gallerists that, like, if you have kids, it's gonna damage your career. If you do this, like, there's so many shitty things that female artists get told. You just jumped in.
it just kind of happened.
It just kind of.
But I want to say something. Bob Holman was married to Elizabeth Murray. So I got to meet Elizabeth Murray, became friends with her because of Bob Holman, who I met at the Cedar Artist Project. Okay, she had at least 3 kids.
Yeah.
Right? It was never an issue. I mean, so what? It wasn't. And Hetty Jones, who was, you know, the mother of Kelly Jones and Lisa Jones, was also a dear friend, right? And so we all met. I mean, I'm trying to remember how I met Hetty, but it was, you know, it must have been through the Studio Museum in Harlem, because I was also an artist in residence in '85. And so at the Jamaica, before that, there were shows at the Jamaica Art Center that Kelly curated. And so we were all beginnings, our career. We were all in the beginning.
Did you know Daisy, Elizabeth's little girl? Did you ever meet her?
I didn't really know them that well,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Daisy was always somebody whose name was
I've
Sophie.
gotten to
There
know
was a
her
Sophie,
recently.
there was a Daisy. But you know, Elizabeth was a great mother, you know,
Yeah.
and she was a fantastic artist.
Incredible.
And she wrote the first show that I had at June Kelly Gallery way back. She wrote the essay for me.
No kidding.
And that was her first ever essay for an artist.
Wow.
Introduction. Yeah, it was very beautiful.
That's.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel bad that I haven't seen that. Where I need to get access to that.
It's somewhere in my archives.
Wow.
But so I don't know why certain things happen. You know, they just happen, and you notice, and you just feel like your life keeps moving, right?
Yeah.
But I had no idea that this is the person that I was becoming. I just trusted something, right? I mean, you have to have courage. You have to do things that may be scary. Like move out of the city, or like marry somebody you love, or, you know, have a child, you know, or take up art classes, you know. I don't know. I mean, it just kind of it just started, and it just wouldn't stop. I couldn't let it stop, no matter what. And I wasn't selling, you know, I wasn't selling a lot, you know, I just kept doing it.
What did you trust, and what brought you to all black embroidered images? Seeing this at the Museo threw me completely. Like, for the Skowhegan people that are in the room, it's crazy. You go into a room and it's all black, and it's fucking Candida. Like, it was really wild. It was beautiful, like incredibly elegiac, and just there was so much weight there. And it's those pieces, and then there's a video of your mother, and she's preparing food there in the video, and she's very serious too. And it was like a really powerful room. I have so many questions.
Well, black and white drawings, right? So this is going into a very deep, dark space, but there's a lot of tenderness in that space, right? The sewing, which I did by hand.
It is very tender, yeah.
The light captures it in such a way so that I love the whole idea of thinking that you think, like viewer thinks there's nothing there, but then you have to get really close, and then you notice something, right? dinner napkins, you know. I mean, I started to work with dinner napkins because they were soft and easy. And my son was little and I couldn't get to the studio. So I needed to work on something that I could take with me and do it on the bed or do it in a chair, you know, wherever wherever I could watch my kid running around. So I would just take them and make these images. My mother collected a lot of porcelains, or they gave them to her as gifts, and she had a lot of them in Puerto Rico. At this time, my parents were living in Puerto Rico, and we lived in Connecticut, right? And then we came back, and yeah, I had a studio. These were done. I want to say they were. Where were these done? Where was my studio? They were in Chicago,
Okay.
and uh, and so I was doing these small drawing. At some point, I remember seeing this small little painting by Francisco Oyel, Puerto Rican painter. Um, and I went to Puerto Rico just before, like in the 70s for the first time. And I went and I met Lorenzo Mott, who's an artist, you know, who I really admired. And that, you know, Puerto Rico has these amazing artists who worked that I noticed with printmaking. You know, there was a lot of beautiful posters. I didn't really know a lot of the visual artists, but from Fordham University and Lincoln Center, I met somebody there who knew this artist, and so that's how I got to the studio for the first time. And I was so nervous. I remember hardly talking to him, but he told me to read all the books in the social history of art.
Oh, wow.
So I did that and came back. And then somewhere along the line, I went to Paris. I wanted to go to Paris, and I think it was during the Cedar Arts Project. Um, when I had a little bit of money, and I took myself to Paris because I wanted to see the work of Francisco Oyel firsthand. And I saw that work in the 80s because there was a show that El Museo del Barrio was putting together and with the Met. And it showed a lot of work from Puerto Rico. Like, yes, you know, this was one of my favorite paintings. And I wanted to paint like that. When I saw that, I was like, I want to paint big. And it was
This is
so
from
beautiful.
1893, The
Yeah,
Wake.
1893. So he did a piece that's much smaller that was at the it's not the Louvre. It wasn't at the Louvre. It was like the Impressionist Museum. It was in a smaller set, and then they moved this museum. And so anyway, his painting, which was little, it was called Estudiant, not that one, a little one like like that. And he was a portrait of Emile Zolder, and he was drinking tea at a table, and then right next to him is like maybe his housemaid, right? And she has this big dress on, and she's she has on her lap this black material, and she's sewing. So it was years later after I made my black drawings that I remember seeing that painting.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, did that really affect me? Like, did that? But it was so wild. I was like, oh my God, I became that housemaid paint, sewing. That's the way I felt. I was like, and that painting is so beautiful. It was facing the Mona Lisa. That little painting, the two little painting, there were two little, and Mona Lisa's not big.
Yeah.
And Francisco Oyel's painting was right there. So that was an amazing moment that I will never forget.
Huh. Wow. I never would have I would have never known that whole backstory. I mean, the works are beautiful and they're moving on their
I don't think
own.
I've talked about it, but not in a long time.
That's incredible.
Well, that's why conversations are interesting, right? Because you can't remember
is that
everything.
why they're called lap drawings? Because you were
I
literally
worked
sewing.
on my lap.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
then they got bigger, right? So the big ones, I still did them on my lap, but they were bigger.
They're huge.
Yeah, they're really big.
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. I wanna go to, let's see. I want to go to the air paintings. So 2017 was a really consequential year for you for a whole number of reasons. There were amazing things that happened and not so amazing things that happened. And it feels like the air paintings kind of became a way to process the ups and downs.
Well, I had just, it was 2017, right? I had a really big show at the Cultural Center um, that was curated by Terry Myers, who was one of my colleagues at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And it was a very important show for me. And so after that opened, and then it was I think it just closed, and then my father died. He was in Puerto Rico, and then about 3 months later, I was there with my mother, and then I left, and my sister went to stay with my mother because she was grieving, and my mother's never lived alone, right? I mean, it's been years. And in that time, for me, when I left and my sister was there, the Hurricane Maria came. And so it was devastating because we couldn't find our people, right? We were all searching on Facebook, trying to connect with people who was there, were there, and you couldn't call. The cell phones weren't working. And so there were weeks and weeks where we were just frantic, not really knowing the state of things, and so I was in Chicago trying to keep sane, right? Because my mother and sister were there, and we couldn't find them. We couldn't hear from them. So, but there was something that said, "I'm sure they're okay. I'm sure they're okay." Just before that happened, I had a commission that was a sort of this. A digitized mural, right? It was like It was digitally produced, printed on mesh, which was used for banners. Chicago has a lot of mesh has a lot of banners, but this was for under the Wacker Bridge, right? So the engineers had to construct the weave in such a way so the bridge it wouldn't come down.
I see.
So this idea of air was really important to the design of the material, and I was fascinated by that, right? So it's like canvas, except that, this was outside, right? But there's that little window of air, and you just keep thinking about that, right? I kept thinking about it.
It makes me think of you being fascinated with launching the penny.
Yeah, exactly. There's something about something else that happens inside and outside of material, or inside or outside of functionality, right? It's like that gets to something that is mysterious, like a wish, right? I had to produce this piece. It was very big. It was one of my largest commissions outside. And so it was like maybe 200 feet across, 70 feet high, multiple panels. Jeez. So we had a proofing process. And so these pieces came from that proofing process. They were the excess, the stuff that wasn't used. So I just asked for them. Can I have them? I wanted to take them. And I just rolled them up and took them to the studio, never thinking I would use them. And it was during this time period when we couldn't figure out where my mom or sister, how they were. That was a very restless time. I decided to unroll them and just do something kind of different. And so I started pouring paint and squishing paint and, stepping all over it and just doing something else. And that's how these came to life. That's why they're called air paintings.
Yeah.
But also the framing for them took a while to get to. Like, I didn't know what to do with them because I never thought I would show them. I just was making them. And then I thought, wow, two-sided paintings. So I had a...
Is it sandwiched between the aluminum at the top?
Yeah, there's a really beautiful way in which they get inserted with a wooden dowel, like inside. There's a little opening. And it was Idris Soto's husband who does Novelis, what's the name of his company? I can't remember now. Who really helped me construct these. It was his design.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, he's really good. And so I'm very happy with them. And so sometimes I refer to them as paintings with little feet. But it was the first time I've ever had a show. And I want to say thank you to Monique Meloche, because she was really the only person that wanted to show them. And that was my first show with Monique.
Oh, wow.
And that was around 2020, right?
Yeah.
And so I was grateful to her for showing them and taking them on, right? Because I've never shown anything like that. I've
Yeah.
never had a show where I didn't use the walls.
Right. It was all in space.
Yeah. But I love the idea of working with these, like a kaleidoscope. I still want to do more. Eventually I'll do more of these, because I still have a plan for them.
They're really great.
Right.
There was a quote that this is something that you said around the time of producing these. Mother Earth is dealing with all of this abuse, and it's in overdrive right now, so people are scared. When the ground doesn't stop rumbling, you don't recognize your home turf. You become lost as the walls crumble. Overall, there's lots of tenacity and creativity. Overcoming fear is just part of who we are as human beings. We have to stand up for something. We have to love something. Death and life are so close together, and when we suffer trauma, we're pushed in different ways to remember that there are ways in which you can find and be reminded about what is right and what is wrong, and still, this I think is kind of key, still be the individual in the room without losing our commitment to community. I thought that was really moving, just in terms of being able to center yourself, but also realizing it's not you going through something, and it's not atomized. It's like we can hold space for ourselves while within community. And when you say like there was nothing on the walls, like they're all taking up space together. Like there was its own community of works.
Yeah, I think that community has always been a very important word to me. It's always been important. I can never live life without it. I mean, I think that, to think you're all by yourself here is kind of, I mean, you are on some level, but we all need each other on another level, right? I mean, love is like so important,
Yeah.
right? And so, and you need the seeds, to grow from and with, right? I mean, to take the courage, you have to fall in love with something, right? Or to be, to sort of, to dare yourself to do something, or like, why pick up a brush, why pick up a pen? Like, right? I mean, what makes us do those things, unless there's, I mean, outside of an assignment, right?
Yeah, the assignments end.
Right. But, when we were kids, we would take rubber bands and we would knot them together and skip rope, right? Like they call it Chinese jump rope, right? That was fun. Or we had a piece of, you had a long piece of rope, and then we did double dutch, we would just, so think about that, right? The way we were being creative since we were really young. So, yeah.
This work is called Estoy Bien. I'm okay, or I'm good. And it's like, it finds its way into a much larger landscape, and it makes me think, like, again, of like the individual in the community, like somebody shouting out like, I'm good, but then it's like in this landscape of like all these other things happening, and potentially a lot of destruction happening as well. And like that phrase became almost like it became really powerful for a lot of people, because like first it was for this particular work, and then it was for the triennial at the Museo del Barrio, or where? Yeah.
It became Estamos Bien, right?
Estamos, yeah, exactly. And then there's the shift.
But Estoy Bien came from listening to all the interviewers interviewing all the Puerto Ricans that they were trying to find up in the mountains, right? And they would say, well, how are you? They would ask, well, how are you? Well, what am I going to say? Estoy bien. I'm alive. I can talk to you. But it was sort of, it was also not, it was just a way to pause the pain. It was a way to sort of hold the space. So you wouldn't ask me anything else. I might start tearing or something. It was a way to hold space, to hold oneself together, right? It's like a quiet period. Like, I need time to reflect. I can't say anything else. So it wasn't really, it's kind of more cynical than not, right, in a way, but I was trying to be okay too. and I was trying to do what I loved. And it felt good. I could disappear for a while, like.
I like that you say that it was kind of cynical, because like it became this like banner of like, we're okay, we're fine. But yeah, you're hiding a lot of pain. And like it's just like, just shut the fuck up and
Yeah,
leave me alone.
right, exactly. Exactly. Estoy bien.
Yeah. And it's yeah, there's two sides to that, and it's nice to hear it from you. It's nice to, because you feel it too. There's something protective, like even though there's air that's going through it, even the way that it's in the painting, kind of like formally speaking, it's just like it's there, but it's not welcoming you. It's not bringing you in. It's just it happens to be there. It's just like there.
Well, I remember writing that too. I felt like it was almost like a little bubble, right?
Yeah.
Like a
It
text
could
bubble.
pop.
Yeah.
You have a show at Richard Gray Gallery right now with a person who I think has been very influential on generations of artists, but of course for you as well, Bob Thompson. Um, let's. Oh yeah, this is totally.
That was the first piece I fell in love with at the Art Institute of Chicago when I started teaching.
This is called
The
Equestrian.
the Tang, from the Tang Dynasty, and I did a whole series of paintings using that figure.
It's called Flower of the Horse.
Flor de Caballo.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was meant to sort of conceptual. I was very interested in sort of describing a beginning and ending point. So I was tracking my tenure and my emeritus status. Like I was leaving teaching.
Oh.
And so I wanted to do these pieces that were paintings that really reflected this time. So Flor de Caballo refers to the Tang Dynasty horse, which is, this symbol of beauty, right? This figurine epitomizes beauty, and I love the relationship of the body to the horse, and the horse, they're sort of bowing to each other. It's a very beautiful piece. It's still one of my favorite pieces. One of the first pieces my eyes gazed upon when I entered the museum as I was about to teach, right? So for me, that's the beginning point with my relationship to Chicago and teaching. And so, but I love this circular motion, the slowness of it. And then when I left, the flower responds to this beautiful orchid that I got as a gift. When I left, I was at Mana Contemporary. I was leaving my studio. I was going to Michigan, it was COVID. And this artist, Maria Pinto, actually, who's an amazing designer, whose clothes I wear sometimes, she was leaving her studio. And she had these beautiful orchids. And she said, Candida, you can take an orchid. And I took an orchid. That orchid still blooms.
Really?
Yeah, in my studio in Michigan. And so I just used the idea of the gift, as a way to say thank you, right? It was just this beautiful sort of, and so that, I have this wonky way of combining things. So that's how I got to these paintings, Flor de Caballo.
They're really rich and they feel like so alive, but the way you were talking about kind of leaving teaching and sort of this being a send-off too, it made me even look at this sculpture differently. It feels there is something more melancholic about it, but I'm curious, was this a way of like almost making a celebration for yourself?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It
was about making it present, right? Like make it, you give it visibility, right? You give a certain amount of time visibility, right? And you can create a painting that can hold something particular, right? For me, I needed to do this. And so that's kind of how I work, I just have these ideas and I want to put them together.
So with the Bob Thompson show, how did this come together? How did, were you...
I was asked to do, Richard Gray, Raven, who's the director, wanted they were doing these shows where they invite artists to work together, and so they came to the studio. They saw I had a Bob Thompson, that I liked Bob. I had a beautiful sort of card that I've had for a long time. And they said, "Would you want to have would you like to show with Bob Thompson?" And I was hesitant at first. I was like, "Show with Bob Thompson?" Okay. And so it's been amazing. I'm still working with I'm still making more paintings, but the show is 6 paintings that I had to create. I loved it. It was beautiful. It was magical. I like having conversations with artists, and to have a conversation with him felt right. And I think, he died so young. He was
young.
So young. And so I wonder if he would have been an abstract painter. Right? I mean, he was going that way, right?
Yeah, he definitely was.
But I just wanted to talk to him. And so it's kind of nice to have this conversation.
Does it feel, something that I always feel like, there's paintings before this, like at your show at Gavlak in Los Angeles, which I'll show in a minute, but that have the way that you're developing layers is very different than how you're developing it here in, say this one's CBOB 3, where everything kind of feels like it's like on the same surface. It's very flat, it's very matte. And then there are other paintings before this, which like there's layers, you can see through the paint, you can see other things happening. And it almost reminds me of like when we see early to mid de Kooning versus late de Kooning, where the mark gets much more fluid and soft and there's a serenity to it. And I'm wondering, does it feel like that's where you're at? Does that relate to you? Like, do you think about late de Kooning when you're making work like this?
I have worked with de Kooning.
You've worked with de Kooning.
I have used. I've created paintings with de Kooning. Yes, I've been in conversation with a lot of artists, but I used to face de Kooning, the excavation painting. Actually, it was the excavation painting because I used to see that painting almost every day on my way to classes or going.
Oh yeah.
So it was always in there. I mean, the museum is very important to me, right? Because I'm always looking at things. So there are residues, right? There are things, the coloration. There's something about the whole notion of excavation. Supposedly he. What was the name of that movie? He was watching this movie with Sylvia Manglano. What was it called? Oh, it's at the tip of my tongue. But anyway, and so he was looking, supposedly from this book, there was a biography that was written on him. He was talking about how he was looking at this particular scene. There was a group of women. There was a little sort of rustle that they was sort of there was some kind of little fight that happened in the rice paddies. I don't know. There was some skirmish that was, and he was watching this film, and he claims that has something to do with how he painted that. The painting excavation, right? Mm-hmm. Which I found really interesting. Mm-hmm. So I looked at the film too, and said, "Wow, this could be really interesting." And looking at excavation, I was trying to dismantle it. I was trying to understand it. It's curious painting, right? And I love that, he uses women. When you look at his paintings, he has a whole mashup of things, right? And so, I don't know. I found him interesting. So that was a while ago.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Look at it. It's kind of like intriguing. So, and it's very active. It's a very active painting.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and I love that it's all like emotion, sort of. Then you could say it holds together too, simultaneously. So that's kind of, it's like that feel, that space, that kind of cubist space, but not really. It's like almost like a Wilfredo lamb, but not. It's like there's something about the chalkiness of it. I find it intriguing. So
these are paintings from the Gavlak show, mm-hmm. which the surface and the way that you're thinking about about paint, about movement, about how a painting comes together is very different than the works with Bob Thompson. There's something much more serene about like when it moves into kind of interlocked shape and just like how that shape kind of lives. Like what I guess since there's always stories that come with like these movements and how these things develop, I'm just curious, like what are the stories that get you into a place where they can lock together that way?
I don't think about it that way because they have a path. Like there's a pathway, and I'm interested in composition. I'm interested. I mean, I was taught painting, and I mean, I was taught that composition. The most important thing in a painting is how you compose the composition itself. How do you keep the eye engaged? Where's the opening? Right, it's like a navel. So you have to have a little part for the eye to go into. Thing, like I got to get you in there, and then I got to keep you enraptured enough. I got to entangle you enough in there to keep you there. So that's my main objective, is to keep you looking at the painting, right? Like, how do I do that? Because it's how do I stay with the painting?
Yeah.
It's like it's really a color thing. It's not really the story thing. When I'm painting, it's just really how the colors are being activated, how they're becoming families. I love this idea that two colors can become, three colors can become a family, right? And how you start to see the third, fourth, fifth, sixth color within the combinations. I love that. So when I start to see that, I'm happy. So it's really it's like an eye seduction. It's like, it's what I need.
Yeah.
It's what I do for myself.
And this is what you need right now.
I just need I need the color to sort of hold me up. Like I need the alchemy. Like I need to, it's like a fix. It's like I need to see it growing. It's like having a garden, I guess, you flower, you water your garden and you see all those blooms and they're all really beautiful, right? So, I don't know. There's just something about the feeling it gives me.
You brought up both family and the garden, and it makes me think of this quote from the book that you worked on with your colleague, Tim. I've begun to see that it's not just one self. It's a multitude of sich. For me, that definitely includes the politicized woman who embraces her Puerto Rican heritage and bilingualism, as well as the self-determined to stay out of all the cultural boxes which threaten my freedom to make choices. It's like you have a family of selves in your work, too. You've had so many different ways of being that manifest through the way that you make. And like what gives you the support and what gives you that flowering. And it's like, go see the show at Museo del Barrio, because like you can see a person who's, I don't know, it's just, there's so much, even in the darkest moments of it, there's so much joy. There's always joy in how you make and how you think about being alive, no matter what happens.
Oh, thank you. It's, at the end of the day, it's about my freedom to choose and to determine the outcome, right? There's not too many other careers that I could think of where you could do that. So I say, the choice is yours. I mean, it's mine to make, and why not make it? And so so there's a name for what I do, right? They say it's art, and I became the artist. I'm still becoming the artist, right? I mean, I think we have to just, words and the limitations of what that is. I think enjoyment is like pleasure is like number one, and I guess doing this as long as I've been doing it, I don't feel old. Like I feel. It gives me so much potential and opportunity and joy, right? That
Who said you're old?
I know, but I'm just, you think about, if I tell you how old I am, how many years I've been doing this, right? It's a long time. But for me, it always feels brand new.
Yeah.
And so I don't really work well in this idea of repetition. I kind of always want to reinvent something. So even the way I break away from my own sort of systems, like I develop systems and then I break them apart again. It's like, Legos. You could either follow the rules and build that truck, or you could just do it your own way and get to something else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to end before we take questions with one of the prior Candidas. This is from the lecture that she gave at Skowhegan, and I loved this question and I loved the answer even more.
Like, very sincerely, what is your favorite part of being an artist?
I love following what I love. I love painting. I love color because it lives. Um, I love the freedom to be myself. I give myself my own permission. I feel like creativity is the most wonderful gift that we have as human beings. Um, I feel that you have to be courageous in your life, and you have to say yes to the things that you that you want for yourself. It's not easy to get that. Certainly not. It's a challenge being honest to yourself. Um, but at some point in your life, you realize you're either going to go for it now or it's never going to happen. So I say take courage and say yes to the things you really want. And sometimes it takes time to figure that out. And it's a slow journey, it's one step at a time. And you always make mistakes. But I always say paintings have to make mistakes. You have the mistakes are invaluable. That's how you get to your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions that people have for Candida? Yeah, back there.
Appreciate it. So first of all, thank you so much for your word and your energy. I'm curious around you as an educator as well. I'm wondering I'm wondering what is your philosophy or your mission as an educator. You also say that you're not too fond of like familiarity, and has the philosophy and mission changed over the years?
What is my philosophy? Be yourself. Learn as much as you can, and don't be afraid to break the rules. I don't know. I mean, I never thought I'd be teaching, and I didn't plan on it. I think to be a good communicator, teaching, it's a must, right? I mean, so I think to be honest and to try as many things out as you can. Learning is just that, it's just kind of bumping into things that you didn't expect, and you have to be skilled. If you want to paint, you have to learn the basics, right? And so you have to be skilled, and you have to commit. But I just, I've always been who I am. I'm glad to hear I still use the same language too. I mean, I just say, be yourself and find joy in that. And not everybody's going to agree with you, right? You're going to feel bad along the way too, because you're going to say, oh man, what did I just do? I can't explain myself. You know, it's just a mystery to it too. And I think going back to the mistakes could be some of the most empowering things, right? When you begin to understand that it really wasn't a mistake, it's just something fresh and new and unexpected, and you have to kind of reconsider it, right? So, surprises are gifts, right? I think not to be so afraid of the unknown, right? Yeah, I mean, just the power to be yourself is so amazingly important. And we have to, we have to own that. We just be so much more, we would be happier if we were just more content with ourselves, and that's something you learn. You have to learn that or unlearn something else, right? Because there's a lot of pain that we suffer too in that evolution, right? Oh, I want to be an artist. And you're like, what? What is that, right? If you don't come from a family that appreciates that, like, no. So I don't know. I mean, it was a word that I had to understand. I didn't know what it was. It was a hard word to utter, like, artist. I'm an artist. I'm an artist. Oh. But play your violin for me, I mean, you could do anything. You could write, you could play a violin, you could tap dance. Like I said before, creativity is everything, right? It makes us all happier. Thank you.
2 questions in the back.
Hi. I think I have a lot of questions, but I'll choose one. I think a lot of people here are probably artists or have artistic endeavors, but for me, I've been struggling mostly with the idea of an audience, and art is such a personal, intimate thing that you do for yourself in so many ways, and even separate from making a career out of it, there always is an audience outside of yourself. And I was wondering, you touched on it a little bit, that a lot of this work is so personal and cathartic in some ways, but yeah, how do you balance that? Is it ever for other people more than yourself, or how do you try to navigate that?
Honestly, I never thought there would be an audience. I didn't know that there would be an audience. I didn't know that I would continue to do this in this way. I had to learn it. I had to trust something. I had to listen out for it. I trusted my teachers, I listened. I made mistakes. I was, really shy as a kid. I had to really move slowly and try different things and feel like I failed at them, So you can't, I mean, unless you're a performance artist, audience is really important, right? I mean, I think I think that those are the things that might keep you from doing the actual things you need to do, because you're so preoccupied with this other notion of, who's right or who's more right than you, right? I mean, we were talking about that earlier, right? The fear of talk, like public speaking, until one day you realize, well, you could only speak for yourself, right? And so trusting that is a big deal, right? When does that happen? Like, when do you feel you've crossed that bridge? Like, I really do believe in what I'm saying, right? Or even better, it's like I'm finding the language that I need to explain what it is that I'm trying to do. And so I think we can find that language in so many different places. It doesn't have to be just from the painting catalogs, you know what I mean? So, I mean, there's so many ways to riff and to be, to trust this material. You have to trust the material that you're choosing, right? So, or maybe it chooses you. I don't know. Sometimes you trip into something, you're like, oh, maybe I can sculpt, I think to ponder, to have the time to consider is huge, right? Not everybody has that time.
It's a privilege, yeah.
Right? And so I think that whatever time we do get is to use it wisely, right? And not flounder so much. We waste a lot of time too.
We can get one more question.
Hi, Candida. Such an honor. I'm Jonathan Markin. I classify myself as a art enthusiast. Your work often move between abstraction and figuration. And in piece like John Street Series 12, there's a sense of fragment memory embedding urban architecture, right? So how do you see drawing, especially in charcoal, functioning not as just as a medium, but as a language for reclaiming personal and cultural stories that are often overlooked or erased in dominant narrative?
That's a huge question. Wow. Um, drawing is basic, right? I mean, as a kid, you have to learn the alphabet, right? You kind of have to string that alphabet together to form words. It's fundamental within our core. So drawing is fundamental, I think. And I don't know. Your question is so multifaceted. I don't know if I get it, if I can even jab at it a bit. I just want to say that nothing is ever certain. Like I think the beginning point is a beginning point, but you never really always know or understand where that is, right? And then how that takes root, and then how you can how you begin to expand that with real roots, like, or threads, that really become the fiber of your intelligence and your memory, and your love of the sort of the realities of life, right? I mean, there's so many ways to be in the world, to be present, to be able to be creative, but yet still be more of a historian, right? Or seeking histories of cultures that that are still misunderstood. To sort of figure out how we all do come together. How diaspora really does live as a heartbeat. I think this is it's complex because you can thread this in so many different ways, right? Landscape is not just horizontal; it could also be very vertical, right? So, like history, right? I like to think of history like the root of a tree, right? And sometimes those roots could go for miles, right? And miles, and then it can go up, and then it becomes something else. So I think that we just have to fundamentally be creative and free to translate and retranslate, and to sort of begin to take on the materiality or the tools that we are clinging towards, right? Because we all have different relationships to like tools, right? Like I need that pen, to really write what I'm thinking, or I need that recorder to sing what I'm feeling, or I need to be in a conversation with somebody, like a historian, right, to figure out what's next. So I think that there's so many ways. If you just rely on your creativity, I think you can get to some truth, that is for you. And I think everybody in this room can have different ways of finding answers to the same question, right? I mean, so we have to dream, and we have to fail too. We have to fail at trying to answer something that just gets deeper the more serious you get about it, right? I mean, I don't know. That's why I love what I do, because I can keep exploring, and I can keep changing my mind, right? And then I could turn it into something else. And you know what I mean? And so I can stop when I want to, right? So I love having that kind of space that I'm in control of. I don't know if that answers your question,
No,
but
thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Gracias.
Everybody, give it up again for Candida Alvarez.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
NewCrits is a global platform for virtual studio mentorship, and hopefully you saw some of that on the screen behind you. We have studio mentorship, professional mentorship, contract coaching, and portfolio reviews. And really what we're trying to offer is just all the things that, an MFA program or just higher level art education gives you, but just trying to democratize that for people that don't really want to go into an MFA program. So we have 16 artists on our roster that are incredible artists, but they're also incredible educators. And if you have any more questions about that, feel free to speak to me afterwards or check out our website, follow us on Instagram. We have a Substack. All of these talks are recorded. They'll be on our YouTube channel, and they will also be transcribed to our Substack. And then you can listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.